so much for this opportunity. I'm so excited to share what I think is one of the most impactful pieces of information and practices that leaders of organizations or teams can have. And thank you very much for that introduction. And let me just add a little bit to that, as a career educator of over 30 years, lots of academic experiences, leadership theories, management, all of those things. I can tell you that a few years ago, when I became acquainted with the DISC personality assessment and the training that I received in that, I'm now a certified trainer. I can tell you that it is probably one of the most impactful things that I have ever learned and implemented as a leader. And so it's a fun topic to talk about, and today's title is Learn How that Your DISC Personality Profile Directly Impacts Your Leadership Success. So we're going to go through and learn a little bit. As I mentioned, I am a certified consultant with Personality Insights Institute. Dr. Robert Rome's work for over probably close to 30 years on research on DISC personality insights, and just continues to add to that body of work. So I'm delighted to be a part of a consultant for that organization. So today's key learning points, we have 3. And the first one, of course, is I'm going to take you through a very quick little way to identify your own DISC personality assessment. We're going to talk about what those letters stand for, D-I-S-C, so that in understanding yourself better, you can obviously better understand those that you lead. And that is the secret. That is what we want to get to today. Second key learning point is you're going to learn some vital insights towards becoming a great leader or a greater leader, and developing even more success with the people that you influence and lead. And third, learn to identify and develop ways to encourage your team members towards greater productivity and peak performance. Now, before we actually dive in, I want to just talk for just a moment. Of course, there are many different kinds of personality assessments out there on the market today. I'm sure that if you've been in leadership or management for any length of time at all, you've probably gone through one of those assessments, whether it's Myers-Briggs or StrengthsFinders or one of many other kinds out there. And there's actually a lot of merit to different kinds of assessments and sort of understanding yourself in a variety of ways. But the reason why I am so much in support of the DISC personality profile is because it is extremely simple to understand. It's very simple to talk about, and each of the letters, the D-I-S-C, actually stand for each of the DISC personality profiles. So some of the other assessments, you really have to study them for quite some time to understand how to explain what your profile ends up being with your assessment results. And then lastly, of course, with DISC, there are assessments. There is an online assessment that you can do. There's various platforms to do that, so you can have a comprehensive report or a more basic report. But even more simplistic from that is what I'm going to share with you today, that there's literally, and what we're going to talk about this morning or this evening for many of you, that you will come away with at least an introductory understanding of what your profile, maybe your main profile point is. And then, of course, if you actually took the entire assessment, which of course we're not going to be doing during the webinar, you would have a lot more detail on that. So sort of primary and secondary personality styles. Okay, so just wanted to make sure you sort of knew that what I'm sharing with you this morning is very basic, and you would want you and your team to actually take the entire online profile or an in-person training seminar, which we do very frequently. Okay, so here we go. We want to first understand ourselves. So in the human model of behavior, one of the most important things to know is that everyone is wired very differently. And so there's two questions that we're going to answer together. So hopefully you have, you're taking some notes, a few notes this morning, and I'll point out to you some things that's going to help you move along. So if you're taking notes, here's question number one. Am I more outgoing or am I more reserved? Now, you know, when you answer this question, or when you think about this question, you know, so when you go into a group of people, do you find yourself going up and talking to people very easily? Maybe you don't know them very well, but that's just something that you just naturally do. Or do you find yourself being sort of that reserved type person that not as quite as eager to get into a group setting, and maybe you're sort of the person that waits for someone to approach you. So on your notes, just kind of make a note for yourself. Okay, I believe I am more outgoing or I'm more reserved. Okay, and again, as we look at this, give you a little more hint if you're still kind of on the fence about which one of those to do. It asks you or gives you more information. So outgoing people tend to speak and move with high levels of energy, and even their gestures and facial expressions have more passion animated than more reserved individuals. So maybe that will give you just a little bit more to help you in answering that question. Reserved people tend to speak more quietly, less forcefully. Their gestures and facial expressions often seem more guarded than the expressions of outgoing individuals. Okay? So hopefully that gives you sort of just a top of the waves information for you to go ahead and decide. It's really going to be important that if you've not gone through a DISC profile before, that you answer these questions about yourself before we go much further, because that's really going to be the power in the rest of the presentation today. Okay, so in looking at this understanding yourself traits to look for, here's a little bit more information. So if you're outgoing and active, that might mean that you can consider yourself more fast-paced, more involved, energetic, optimistic, positive, and enthusiastic. And what we've come to know about outgoing people is their focus is on talking things out. So when you've got a problem to solve, or something that, you know, you do a lot of thinking out loud, you're talking through it. So again, a few more traits of outgoing people. Reserved people, again, a little more slower paced, cautious, concerned, reluctant, do more critical thinking, perhaps more discerning, a little more reserved, and their focus is on thinking things through. So two big differences there. So if you just wanted to write down two things there, outgoing people, their focus is more on talking things out, and reserved people, theirs is more focused on thinking things through. And I think that's a very important distinguishing point as you're making that decision about yourself, whether you're more outgoing or reserved. So that's question number one. So by now, I hope you've decided for yourself which one of those are, and jot that down. Okay, so let's move on. We're still working on understanding ourselves real quickly, top of the waves with DISC. Second question, am I more task-oriented on the left or more people-oriented there on the right? Okay, so task-oriented or people-oriented. What in the world does that mean? Sounds kind of easy to understand, and it really is. But here's just a little bit more information to help get you thinking about it. So task-oriented people tend to focus more on the job to be done or the goal to be accomplished. They seem to be less influenced by the opinions of others, and they're more logic-based in their approach. Okay, that's the task-oriented person. One way to help you kind of know a little bit more about that side. On the right-hand side, we have people-oriented, and people-oriented individuals tend to enjoy the company of others. They seem to focus on people as being the priority rather than the project at hand. They seem to be more influenced by the opinions of others and less fact-based and more sensitive or emotional. Okay, so you should be kind of getting a little bit better picture now of task-oriented, people-oriented. Okay, here's a little more help. Task-oriented people tend to focus more on form, function, form meaning procedures, function meaning operations, programs, plans, and strategies are very important to task-oriented people, projects, and then processes. So, in other words, steps to things. So if you love a to-do list, you can check those things off and know that you've really accomplished them. That's a big signal that you're task-oriented. And so again, if you're jotting down notes, task-oriented, their focus is on getting things done. Wow, that's just key to a task-oriented person. So let's move over a little bit more support in making the decision on whether you're people-oriented. People-oriented, they are focused on relationships. They love interaction, caring and support, sharing, emotions, usually excitement, feelings, friendships. They love to make connections. They love making connections. And so again, if you're jotting down a note to kind of help you remember about this people-oriented side of things, their focus is on is on other people and how they feel. Okay? So again, hopefully by now you've got a pretty good idea of where you're falling. So when you combine these two ways to divide this circle, so remember we have outgoing at the top, reserved at the bottom, so you should have one of those. You should have made a decision about yourself by now on one of those, and then task or people, okay? And so now you can see that we can divide this circle, which we refer to as the model of human behavior, the model of human behavior. Very simple model. I mean, I have actually sat down in a restaurant with someone I was having dinner with who started talking to me about this and was actually able to draw this very simplistic diagram on a napkin and help them kind of go through what I just shared with you, outgoing, reserved, task, or people, and so then they see. So now you can see we have 4 quadrants, and you can see the D. So draw this, if you're taking notes, very quickly so that you can come back to it in just a few moments. The D then is in the quadrant for both outgoing and task. The I is in the quadrant for both outgoing and people-oriented. The S is in the quadrant for people-oriented and reserved. And the C is both reserved and task, okay? So I'm sure it's very, very easy to read and understand that model for human behavior. So real big letters here on this particular slide, it says remember, and I cannot stress this enough, everyone is a unique blend, underline that, circle that, of these 4 parts. So if you were to actually take the online DISC assessment, you would have a complete report generated for you with graphs. And in those graphs, it's going to graph the D, the I, the S, and the C. And that's extremely interesting because you can see if maybe you're high in 2 of the quadrants and lower in the other 2, or sometimes people are high in 1 quadrant and much, much lower in the other 3. So again, for the purposes of this webinar, just to help you understand very basically whether which one of these 4 quadrants, D, I, S, or C, that you would fall into. And the real secret sauce in all of this is actually taking the assessment and getting all the other great support information that comes with it. So really, again, at the bottom of this slide, I think something much important as realizing that we're a unique blend is that people have predictable patterns of behavior. They relate to specific personality styles, and these styles are also known as temperaments. So they blend together. They can be blends, and that gives each of us our unique personality style, okay? So this helps us understand why we often feel and think and act the way that we do. And of course, once we understand ourselves, it's much easier to understand others, especially those that we are leading in our organization or our teams, which I will tell you from personal experience, being an educator and a leader for many years, it makes a tremendous difference to know and understand about these personality profiles in those people that you are leading. All right, so here's a wonderful graphic that really kind of puts it all together. And so now maybe you know, okay, I see kind of where I fit. This model of human behavior, and don't try and write down all of these words. We're going to take each quadrant separately this morning. And again, this is very, very much top of the waves for you on this information, because we could go in depth and actually spend an entire day talking about this model of human behavior. So we have a very short amount of time with this webinar, but it's great information still, and it is enough to really get you thinking about how you can use this information as a leader. So this just kind of puts it together. I want to also point out to you in the center of this slide, you see there are some symbols that are associated with that, and in an all-day seminar we would talk more about those. The exclamation point for the D, the star for the I, the plus or minus, the either or for the S, and then the question mark for the C. So there's some words listed there that sort of describe each of these personality temperaments or personality styles. So outgoing, very task-oriented for D, I, outgoing but people-oriented, the S, so we move around the circle clockwise, okay, D-I-S-C. So the S, reserved, but they're people-oriented, and then the C is reserved but task-oriented. Okay, so let's dive in. We're going to spend just a little bit of time on each one of these. So again, if you didn't quite get that, you'll have a little more detail. Now I'm going to go through each one of these before we talk about what does this mean for your team. So what are the strengths? If you said, yep, I'm a D, I am very, I'm in that top quadrant, I'm task-oriented, and I'm outgoing. These people are very dominant, direct, and sometimes demanding. Their mindset is get it done, make it happen, and play to win, okay? They focus, they want to win. They actually like competition, hard work, challenges, being in charge, accomplishing tasks, all of those things. They're very goal-oriented, sometimes may appear to be hard to please, very self-confident, firm, industrious, and very performance conscious. And so there's only about 10% of the population in the world. And again, let me just say to you that it doesn't matter where you are in the world. There have been studies done that indicate that these personality profiles pretty much end up being the same, with the same percentages all across the world. So only about 10% of the world falls into that. And that's probably a pretty good thing, because these people are natural in wanting to take on a challenge and be that sort of direct and dominant person. And so 10% is probably a really good number for that case. So that's the D profile. Okay, so we're going to look, both of these are the task-oriented. So this is the one time when we're not going clockwise. we're going to do task-oriented first and then people-oriented. So D is task-oriented, and now taking a look at the C, so what are the strengths? This is the lower left quadrant. So if you said you're task-oriented but you're reserved, there's still that task dominance there, but more reserved. So this person is cautious. They're calculating and very competent. Their mindset is, what's the plan? And I'm sure if this is you or you know someone like this, these are the questions they're asking, you know, from their mindset. What's the plan? Have you thought things through? What's the purpose behind all of this? They must have meaning and reason to everything that they're doing. So you can see there, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but you know, they focus on excellence, being accurate. They're usually the data people on the team. They really want to see the data, to see the background information, understand the why and the details. They're very logical about what they're doing. So both of those are the task-oriented individuals. Now we're going to move over to the right-hand side of the model to the strengths of the people-oriented individuals. So the I, which stands for inspiring, and that's the first word there, inspiring, influential, and interesting. And I think I said the words but didn't focus on it. Let's just go back 1 second. So the D stands for dominant. The C stands for cautious. And the I stands for inspiring. They're also very influential and interesting, and their mindset is the star of the show. They love fun and excitement. They're that person that keeps everything lively and interesting. They like to be the center of attention in very good ways. They have lots of friends. You know, you'll often hear them say things like, "Oh, I just met someone, they're a very good friend of mine." They make friends very easily. Many of them love making people laugh. They're very engaged, lots of activities. They like to be on the go. They're talkative. They're great starters. So these are the strengths of the I type, the inspiring type. And then finally, on the right-hand side, the second people-oriented individual in the lower right-hand quadrant, the S stands for supportive. And so the S types are steady and stable. Their mindset is neutral. Let's get along with others. So they're the symbol, the plus or minus, means more or less. They could go either way. They're easygoing. They're very much people pleasers. If you're working with someone that's an S on your team, oftentimes they want to make sure that all the needs of everyone else on the team are met before theirs are. So they're very supportive. They're very loyal, team-oriented, cooperative. They're the first person to let go of their position and defer to other people. They want harmony. That's a huge word for them. Okay, so those are the 4 types. And so, you know, when we started talking about all of this, we said first it's important to know who we are and what our personality style is as a leader. But the real powerful part of that is in understanding others and team dynamics. And when you do that, there are some really big payoffs, okay? Some payoffs in your organization for that. So on this slide, understanding yourself, that's me, that's you. Understanding others, so your team, those you lead in your organization. And then to build effective relationships and more productive teams. I mean, wow, you cannot go wrong with that. And as I said, from personal experience as a school superintendent with a very large administrative team, lots of teachers, lots of staff, who actually I had them engage in this process, and I can tell you that it was the #1 training that my organizational employees received that made the biggest difference in what they did. Okay, the reason why it is important to know that is because every personality needs a different fuel. So think of an automobile, and it requires a certain kind of fuel, whether it's gasoline or diesel or some mixture there of something, but it would not run on anything, any other kind of liquid. If you put water in the gas tank, that is not what that particular type of engine needs. So in very much the same way, each of these personality styles needs its own fuel. And so you may be saying, well, Lynn, how am I going to know what the personality style is of people on my team? Well, there's two ways, as I mentioned earlier. You can take them through this little very simplistic exercise that I took you through on this webinar, just to get started. But the real power and benefit would come by actually having your team members go through the real comprehensive online assessment, and then you're going to have a lot more to work with and understand what their real blends are, what their strengths are. And we're going to talk about here in a few minutes about blind spots and how important it is to know those. But every personality needs a different fuel, and the fuel you put into something determines its performance. And so to get the highest teamwork performance from individuals and collectively as a team, you're going to want to know that. So here's where you'll want to take a few notes. So if you know that you're thinking about someone or some of your team right now, you might think about one person that you might identify as having the D personality profile, meaning they're very dominant, they're very direct, they're that outgoing and task-oriented person. And if you can actually think of someone on your team or in your organization that fits that profile, just write down the D and jot down their name for each of these profiles, the D, the I, the S, and the C. If you can think of someone on your team that has that dominant, that task-oriented and outgoing, and then what about another person on your team that's the I or inspiring? They're very people-oriented and outgoing. Jot their name down. And then S, the same thing, supportive. If you can think of someone that's sort of reserved, they're always checking on the well-being of others, very harmony-related, they're reserved, and people-oriented, they're always wanting to tend to the needs of others. Write their name down there. And then for the C, the task-oriented, cautious person, the reserved, task-oriented people, they're the person who loves the charts and the graphs and the data. Okay? So for that D person, what is their fuel? And I think this is incredibly important to know. The D person's fuel is results and success. Results and success. That's really what puts fuel in their tank, what makes them go, results and success. And you want to know that because the fuel is different for each one of these personality types. So for an I, their fuel is enthusiasm, fun, and positive attitude. Enthusiasm, fun, and positive attitude. That's their fuel. That's when they're low on that, they need those things to energize them and get them going again. The S personality style, what is their fuel is teamwork. Teamwork and balance. Teamwork and balance. And then the C, what fuels them is quality answers. Quality answers and excellence. So for the C, quality answers and excellence. All right? Just some notes at the bottom. You've already done this. This is where you're sort of identifying some people that you know actually in your organization that would fit these styles. Okay. So why use these advantages with the team, knowing what their personality fuel is? Because, as I'm sure you know, your greatest resource a team has is its people. And we also know that in 10 years, only 3 out of 10 companies will still be in business. Why? Because is this information amazingly important to use with your team inside your organization. It is also very important to be able to quickly and skillfully determine as you interact with a customer or client, are they outgoing, are they reserved, are they task or people, because you can also complement and underscore what their fuel is. And so you're going to be a lot more successful by providing the right service to your clients as well, knowing the DISC personality style. The number one reason for people being terminated is their attitude. And so if you can help with that, if you know you're not going to have to restart with a new employee, maybe they're not getting the right fuel they need in order to help them continue to be productive. And then, of course, lastly, we know that the value in life is valuing others, and that is the key to teamwork. All right, so the final part of the presentation today, I'm going to go back now through each one of the styles. How do you understand a little bit more? I gave you something very briefly just a moment ago, but how do you understand your team members? Okay, so let's say you did write down the name of someone that is on your team in your organization that you lead. That's a D. They're dominant, direct, and decisive. You know, what is it that they need? I gave you their fuels. So now I'm going to give you just a little bit more information on their needs and some other things. So their need is to be respected and followed. Their communication style is very straightforward. They're very gifted at getting tasks accomplished, and they're motivated by, and this is sort of the same thing as the fuel, by more authority or challenges and developing solutions for success. Their ideal environment is to provide challenges with minimal details and working on a task, mention the goal first and the benefit to accomplishing the goal. So if you know that you need to approach a person on your team to give them a task, which they're going to love, first of all, because they're so task-oriented, mention the goal first and the benefit to accomplishing the goal. Okay? So let's say that you identified someone on your team that's also task-oriented but reserved. So they are the C, the cautious, calculating, and correct type. A different way to know that person, a different way to understand them. Their need is to be included in the process. They communicate very logically and very detail-oriented. They're gifted at analyzing tasks and procedures. Their fuel or their motivation is knowing the task was executed with excellence and quality. And they also love being validated as being correct because that is something they value so much. Their ideal environment is a setting that stresses the importance of doing things right, And so if you need to give a C personality type person a task to do in your organization or on your team, you'll want to make sure that you provide a plan or a structure with an explanation of the purpose in attempting the task. Now, as we go through the last two, I think it becomes quite clear to you that it would be a great mistake to approach a team member with a certain personality style in a way that would appeal to you. So, for example, if I were a C and I need logical and detailed communication, and that is not the fuel of an I or an S, it is so important as a leader to understand that just because it is a way we would want to be communicated with, that is not going to get the performance out of a person with a different personality style. Okay, so that is a very, very important point. So now let's move on to the people-oriented team members on your team. If you thought of someone earlier that you believe is very people-oriented and outgoing. They're the I inspiring type. Their need is to be liked and affirmed. So you can immediately see the difference from what we just talked about with the task-oriented. Their communication style is very friendly and informal. They're gifted at persuading others with excitement and enthusiasm. They're motivated by image, how it will make them look in the organization. Their ideal environment is very open and flexible with minimal structure. Now, that's pretty much just about the opposite of the C personality style. So very quickly there, you can see a huge difference. And so if you were needing this I personality style to work on a task, you'd want to provide an overview, but only assign short-term steps with rewards for each step that's accomplished. So you want to paint the picture up front of the whole goal, the whole process of their success, and how it's going to add to them relationally and them looking good in the organization. Okay? And so lastly, the second people-oriented team member, their great need, being supportive and wanting harmony, is to feel safe, and actually they love teamwork. So this is going to be a person that really, really loves working on a team. They communicate in a warm, open, and sincere style. They're gifted at solving people problems and relating to others. They're motivated by peace and stability. They want to know what to expect and with minimal problems, hopefully. Their ideal environment is peaceful, a helpful attitude where everyone gets along with little or no conflict. And so if you were going to approach a person on your team with this particular personality style, you'd want to provide simple, written, step-by-step instructions with suggestions on how to accomplish the task. And again, because they're so people-oriented, you probably want to assign one task at a time. All right? So now we're going to move on as we finish up to some secret insights here for peak performance, which is what we all want as leaders. And so again, we're going to look at first the task-oriented side, and then we'll look at the people side. So if you are a D as a leader, you want to remember to yield some of that dominance and authority. You want to allow others to have authority when needed. You want to allow others time to process information and give them time to get back with you. Focus on their needs and listen. And remember that over 65% of the individuals on your team most likely are people-oriented. And so as a D, it's very important. So if you are a D and you are a leader of a team or in your organization, this is a very important slide for you as we go through each of these to help you know what are my blind spots. That's a term that we use in personality insights. Knowing your blind spot is the most important thing as you interact with team members who have a different personality style than you do. So what about the C? What if your dominant trait is a C? Remember to be flexible and positive. So resisting the tendency to give too much detail can be confusing. You want to focus on objectives or the goal first. You want to adapt your expectations to individuals. And remember, again, as a task-oriented person, that over 65% of the other people are going to be relationship and people-oriented. How they feel about issues is going to be more important to them than those tasks. So the D and C people, leaders, some great advice and secret insights for you working with your team. If you are an I leader, you need to remember to be accurate, because remember, you're that people focused person already. So to be more business-like and structured, resist feeling your way through projects, be accurate with your answers. Remember that 35% of individuals are task-oriented. So if you're an I leader, you're still going to have a significant number of people on there that are task-oriented, and you'll need to provide them the fuel they need as task-oriented people. And then lastly, if you are an S-style leader, remember to express yourself. You have to remember to exercise authority, give directions, and set boundaries. And resist the tendency to agree with each issue presented. You know, those S styles want that harmony, but as a leader, it's important to resist, just agree with everything, and also remember to help team members finish projects and feel more at peace with work. Okay, so a little bit of a wrap up here for us. Again, secret insights to reaching the full potential of the team. If you're a D, successful people know how to relax and take time out to recharge, create balance in life, make your personal life a high priority. If you're an I leader, influential people know how to listen and pay attention and to others without being admired, wanting to be admired or have attention. Let your actions speak louder than your words. If you're an S leader, nurturing people know how to let others take responsibility for their own actions, and think of what could go right versus the problems in life. And lastly, conscientious people, the C, know how to use their intelligence to create solutions and encourage others. Okay, so there are some danger zones, and again, this will be in the presentation that will be made available to you, because one last note I'd like for you to take is you cannot be aware of something until you are first aware of something. And being aware of your personality style, your blind spots, you can see these here on the screen, that are some blind spots and potential danger zones for each style to be aware of as a leader. All right? So again, some important empowering statements to use when you're working with your team. Everyone that's breathing in our organization, and that's everybody, needs to be encouraged. And these are ways that you can encourage those people on your team. So there's lots of benefits. We want to end with this. To increase your bottom line and to improve the performance of your team, you want to win the approval of others and inspire others to be and do their best. You're truly supporting others by encouraging teamwork and cooperation and improved effectiveness of the team and knowledge of how to work efficiently. So there's some huge business benefits as well, okay? And so, as we know and have heard for many, many years, together everyone achieves more. And by knowing your own personality style and the personality style of your team and your organization, you most certainly can achieve more. So that concludes my portion of the presentation for today.
So, thank you very much for such an intriguing presentation. Folks, we are now open for the question answers. If you have any questions, you can either put in the question box given in the end of the webinar console, or you can equally raise your hands by clicking on the hand icon available on the webinar console. So let me go straight to the question box. We have a question that is DISC personality test validated or reliable?
Yes, absolutely. I actually have a copy of a reliability official research study that was done with all of the statistical factors as a part of that. So yes, it is reliable.
We have another one, Dr. Lynn. Can these personality styles change or they remain static?
What was the last part? Can the personality style change? What was the last part of the question?
Uh, can these personality styles change or they remain static?
I'm still not hearing the last part very well.
Can these personality styles change or they remain static the same?
Does it change or does it stay the same? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay, great question. For when you take the assessment, you are given two graphs. You actually graph your results in two ways. One is the basic, which means that is your personality style, that is your preference. And then the other graph shows you your environmental style. And so, as you can imagine, we can learn to adjust and adapt to different environments. So, I can use myself as an example there. I am very task-oriented. So on my profile, I am actually a DC profile, so I am double task-oriented. But as a leadership consultant and trainer and educator, obviously, I love people. I love interacting with people, teaching people. And so in my professional setting, I have learned to be very intentional about being more relational and connecting with people. So in different environments, when I do the seminars, I encourage people to look at their blind spots as we discover throughout the seminar, and we begin to work on ways to be intentional about making sure that we are effective in our blind spot areas. So no, your basic personality style does not really change, but you certainly can learn to adapt and be more intentional about focusing on the areas maybe where it is not something that you would feel really natural doing.
Is this culturally consistent?
Any other questions?
Yes. Is this culturally consistent?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And other one is, what are the personal growth areas for S personality types?
Okay, the S personality types, so they're just wanting a little bit more information about the S? Is that the question? Just a little more information about the S personality style?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, so if you are a leader and you have the S personality style, I think that paying attention to those potential danger zones, so I think I can go back here just a minute and spend a little bit more time there. Okay, here we go. Are they still able to see my slides at this point?
Yes, you can.
Okay, I have the slide back up on the potential danger zones, if you still can see that. But the S, I think the S personality style is very important to note as a leader, that that saying no or making controversial decisions, challenging decisions that you believe may not be agreed with is really tough for leaders that have S. And so one of the danger zones for an S personality style as a leader is overcommitting yourself. We talked about the harmony, the idea that you're a very nurturing person. You want others to, their needs to be met, but for an S, letting go, delegating, understanding that others need to be held responsible for the parts of their task in the organization is very important. And so providing boundaries is a very important thing for S personalities to do as a leader. And then finally, as an S leader, speaking up sooner and being more open will reduce stress and build better relationships. So I think, the idea there is to learn to exercise your authority as an S, and not really give in to the tendency that your personality style has to be a people pleaser, because as you know, in leadership, that is often not going to take your team to the next level. So again, it's not going to change your personality style, but knowing the blind spots of being that S supportive personality will really help you move your team forward as a leader.
So thank you, Dr. Lynn, for such a great answer and for explaining the personality test, especially the traits of S personality. Members, before we end the webinar, Dr. Lynn, do you have any concluding remarks?
Yes, I would just like to remind those on the webinar that, as I mentioned earlier, this is just sort of a very simplistic approach to the 4 personality styles. And of course, you're going to get so much more out of it by actually taking the assessments, which those can be done paper version face-to-face, but of course, a much more convenient way is through an online portal where you can generate a report. And then, of course, there's many more ways that you can look and detail as you drill down into those to find out more about how you can interact and move your team forward as a leader. So congratulations to all of those who took the time today to be on this webinar.
So I really want to thank you, Dr. Lynn, on behalf of Gulf Business Network Training Center for sharing this valuable information. Thank you all for those who participated in this webinar. We are recording this, so stay tuned to www.gbntc.com/webinars to access the recorded version of webinar or to download the soft copy presentation. You can also check out our upcoming programs and webinars on our website. With this, I would be dismissing you all from this webinar. Allah Hafiz. Take care. Bye-bye.